Russian forces appear to be trapped in place in their campaign to seize Vovchansk. Is this just a temporary delay, or is it a sign that Russia's offensive is already losing gas? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so we finally have some updates over the last 24 hours, right? This is where the battle lines, so to speak, in this Russian northern offensive, this effort to take Kharkiv, stood, right? You can see Halboka, Lukyantsy, and Zelina, all held by Russian forces, partially or completely, as well as Hatshina and Platonivka. But overall, most folks seem to say that Vovchansk was the primary Russian target. And you can see here them trying to take the Vovchansk airfield as well as some of the buildings in the northern portion. You can see a few here that is listed in the contested zone. But in the last 24 hours, you can see the changes have been pretty interesting. First off, there doesn't appear to be a net change in total Russian area controlled, as it looks like they've been pushed out of Zelina, but have advanced further in Hilboka. And this is, to me, a very interesting turn of events. They also appear to have seized the administrative boundaries, the entirety of Lukyantsy. So I look at this and I don't see a Russian invasion force that's like broken the Ukrainians or anything like that. I see the Ukrainians making, again, elastic defense kind of calls, pulling the Russians more into their territory. And as we've talked about, the defenses are pretty light in these kind of border regions by design, right? Because, again, the Ukrainians, unable to attack Russian targets with many of their most powerful Western-provided weapons, forcing them to build their defensive lines at a place where if the Russians invade, they can at least reasonably counterattack. So that's, I think, what you're seeing here. And you're going to see, I think, Russia's advances slow considerably as they try to take Leipzig. As we've talked about, I think Leipzig is probably a operational target for Russia, as it puts them within kind of striking distance of at least the Kharkiv outskirts, right? Their artillery should be able to hit some of these outskirt areas of Kharkiv. It's also even possible that the Lipsy, if Russia can establish a permanent fire base there, that it may actually end up being sort of the artillery cover for a more mechanized Russian offensive that moves down this major highway into Kharkiv. But I think that's Russia's goal. The question is, can they achieve it? Because doing so is going to involve crossing a lot of open ground with reduced room to maneuver thanks to this Kharkiv reservoir and the accompanying dam here, as well as the fact that once they pass the reservoir, they got this big flat open ground in Lipsy itself, as well as some elevated positions here to the northeast of the town. So again, it remains to be seen if Russia can really drive meaningfully towards this objective. Especially given the fact that, again, you're seeing, generally it seems like if Ultra Atina is a metric, is a example of a Russian offensive where there's a substantial breakthrough, then there's some incremental gains that slow over time, and then finally the breakthrough is contained as Ukrainian reinforcements grind out the Russian offensive effort. Now, looking over at this kind of second prong, you can see that the only change is actually an increase in the contested region, with part of the town of Vovchansk listed as contested. This is not, again, this may be a little generous. Some people are reporting that Russian forces have sustained occupation in some of these like northern outskirt buildings, but that has yet to be confirmed. When we look over at the live UA map, you can see they're reporting similar things. They're actually saying that Lukyantsy not in fact taken by Russian forces, and Zelina not even remotely close to being seized, and Halboka still under Ukrainian control entirely. So they're being even more generous in their interpretation. You can see here, again, they list actually the northern districts of Vovchansk as being under Russian control, with the southern majority of the town being under Ukrainian control. As we know, if this is true, once Russia, they're like a virus. Once they get kind of into a host, it's not easy for them, but they have very refined tactics that allow them to take block by block. And I think that's what you might see Russia do if they can get into Vovchansk, is just sort of carve off block by block the entirety of the town. But I think chances are you might see Russian or Ukrainian forces trying to occupy the southern end of this river here, using this as kind of a defensive barrier to secure Vovchansk. I suspect that's what they may choose to do. But the takeaway to me is that what we aren't seeing is any kind of stunning breakthrough, any kind of major Russian offensive, right? This isn't some sort of game changer. This looks like attritional. This looks like Russian forces are forcing the Ukrainians to divert some of their forces to this northern region. And you can see Russia conducting 140 combat engagements across the front line. So this is, I think we're firmly into Russia's summer offensive. I think they planned on doing this northern offensive. I actually suspect doing it with more troops, but I think someone in their high command said, listen, we have to launch this offensive with what we have, because every week we wait, more Western aid arrives in Ukraine, and they know they can't make the same mistake that Ukraine did in its counteroffensive, where they waited till their preparations felt perfect, but the defenders' preparations, in this case Russia's, were also even more well refined. And so Russia may sit there and say, we don't want to give Ukraine a chance to get all of these new materials to reconstitute their forces. We're going to double and triple down, even if it means attacking with an under strength force. Now, if you want to see the footage from this fighting, it just dropped today for members on combatvetnews.com. And you guys know that I'm out here trying to do, putting out content every single day. I have very few sponsors that want to sponsor this type of content, but I rely on you guys, the fans, to support me and keep me and the team able to do this every day. So any one of these tiers is going to get you access to the twice weekly breakdowns of the combat videos. And again, this fighting really interesting because you can see Russia is basically, there was no footage of Russian armored vehicles operating at all anywhere. It was all Lancets and light infantry, which is kind of crazy that you can achieve this level of battlefield effect, which is a lot for this conflict, using just dismounted infantry and drones. So again, if you want to really support me, become a lieutenant or even a colonel tier, you get access to an exclusive room on the Discord, and plus I shout you out at the end of every video, which is pretty cool. So thanks to all the members of Combat Vet News that support me. Now, here's where things are even weirder to me, is that as of 2:45 p.m. Eastern on May 13th, ISW was pretty pessimistic, right? Russian forces, they said, continue to make tactically significant advances north and northeast of Kharkiv, prioritizing the rapid establishment of a buffer zone, setting conditions for deeper penetration. Russian forces, it says, advance into Halboka, raised a flag in the center of the villages, but Russian sources said that Russian forces haven't seized the entirety of the city. Again, I think that there's a little bit of using geolocated footage can be a little deceptive, and the reason is because it's fairly easy and possible to surge into an area and like hold it for a couple hours. But the counterattacks seem to routinely flip these areas back and forth. It's one of the reasons why I like the deep state map. Sometimes they're a little conservative with their assessments, but I appreciate the fact that they're not out here assessing, like switching control of villages willy-nilly, because there's attacks and counterattacks, and generally you need to hold something for about 24 hours in this war before you can really sit there and be like, okay, this is actually occupied by one side or the other. Again, they talk about May 12th, saying that Russian forces seized the Vovchansk meat processing plant in northern Vovchansk. And Russian forces kept a shoe factory. Watch out, guys. They can make kicks. We're done. Ukraine is done for, guys. The Russians are going to turn out off-brand Russian Nikes. maybe all of their infantry troops can finally have the full Slavic Adidas tracksuit kit. But again, you can see they're like, oh, Russian forces rapid rate in Vovchansk, which again, as of yesterday, that's probably how it looked. You can see, right, 10th, 11th, 12th. It probably looks like a big push. 13th, but you can see here again, we're looking at things slowing down like considerably. This isn't like a stunning breakthrough. This isn't some sort of big Russian surge. I think the claims that Russia was going to I think they are seeing exactly what you might expect from Russia launching an attack before they are fully ready. I think you are seeing a attack that has it's kind of anemic, right? So it pushes really hard early on, it surges in, and then very quickly loses steam, right? They run out of their mass of FPV drones, right? Their light infantry kind of make the gains they can make in these low defense regions, and now they have to kind of fight tooth and nail for more gains. It's a really, I think you're seeing in real time the other consequence of launching an attack early. Yeah, you catch the enemy a little flat-footed, but you yourself also lose steam. And this is why, like, this isn't like it's not like a strategy game where there's an objectively better way to play. It's more about making trade-offs, right? War is about trade-offs and risk. You assume some risk by attacking early. You assume some risk by attacking late. So that is sort of the conflict that every commander has to make. Anyway, guys, that is all I had. Thank you to the Colonel tier members. Really, you guys are the ultimate Giga Chads here. Thanks to all of our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do this without you guys. And the video's already dropped, so go check it out, become a member. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.